Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about the big games from the weekend. Georgia Tech gets a big time win over Clemson. Georgia just outlasts Tennessee in Knoxville, and Texas A&M gets the win they've been waiting for quite some time over Notre Dame, 41-40. But we got more games. We got a number of games that we didn't get a chance to talk about in that first segment that we got to talk about right now, and we'll start over there in Baton Rouge. LSU gets a big time win, 20-10 over Florida. This LSU team gets the win. They picked off DJ Lagway 5 times in this football game. I don't know what's happening with DJ Lagway. I really can't describe it. And now, I got some problems with the way this offense ran. He was not throwing the ball well, and you had him throw it 49 times. I don't understand it. I don't know why Jaden Ball is not the absolute cornerstone of your offense. He's the best football player you have, maybe on the entire team, sans maybe Caleb Banks. You have elite running backs. Hand them the football and get out of the way, especially when your quarterback is playing this poorly. DJ Lagway has to be better. Point blank, period. I don't know if it's much going to matter for Billy Napier here pretty soon, but at the end of the day, LSU finds a way to win football games. And the reporter that asked the question got plenty of guff from Brian Kelly. It wasn't pretty. The offense does have a long way to go. They have a number of things to figure out. There's no doubt about that. Winning football games is a big deal. And I think there's a number of things that happened the past 2 seasons that can make that argument very, very clear for us. There's a lot of teams that just don't win, that don't find a way to handle the games that they have to handle. This is a good Florida defense. This is a defense that absolutely can make you pay if you make a number of mistakes. LSU didn't make a number of mistakes. They made a couple, no doubt about that, but they found a way to win this game by 10 points at home at night. You take it and you run with it. It was far from perfect. You got some things to figure out offensively, but that's a win that you feel very confident about moving forward. They're in really good shape. They got Southeast Louisiana next week at Ole Miss, then a bye, then South Carolina. They find a way to go 3-0 in those games. They're in great shape, and they're probably in the CFP before the back half of their season, but then you got Vandy, A&M, Bama, and Oklahoma to end it off. It is not going to be easy. Job is far from finished, but this looks like a defense that is going to keep you in a lot of football games. It looks like a team that is going to be firmly in the mix for an SEC and a CFP run towards the end of the season. And then for Florida, I don't want to waste too much time here. I think they're going to get boat raced by Miami, and Billy Napier is going to be fired next week. I hate to say it. I think Billy Napier is actually a good football coach. I think he will land on his feet. I think he will be more than fine, but this one got away from him, and he hasn't found a way to kind of reel it back in. I don't think they're going to wait until the Texas game. I think they're going to use the bye week. I think they're going to get someone new in there. Maybe they beat Miami and everything changes, but the way Miami's looking right now, I wouldn't necessarily bet on it. Speaking of Miami, Miami wins a comfortable game 49-12 over South Florida. They look the part. About anyone in the country, this team looks the part. There's no doubt about that. A long rain delay in the middle of this game didn't change that Miami dominated from start to finish. Carson Beck did have 2 INTs in this game, but only gave up 12 points to USF, so I think you feel more than fine with that. Carson Beck had 344 touchdowns. He's a very, very good football player, and he's a guy that if you put him in winning positions consistently, he is going to make plays. The one thing I've noticed from him is he's using his legs a lot more this season. Now, not excessively, not a ton, not necessarily a Marcel Reed back there by any means. He's absolutely a guy that can now pull the ball, and that was something that Georgia had a big-time struggle with last year, and it really hurt their run game. He's being able to pull the ball, and I think that's probably something that Miami tried to focus on to help out their run game, and it's really doing the trick. I think this team is going to be really, really awesome. Now, the season will be decided over the next 5 weeks. As far as I'm concerned, they have 2 byes during that time, so it's only 3 games. You have Florida this upcoming weekend. You got to feel pretty confident about that. Then you get a bye, then you go to Tallahassee, which could end up being an ACC title play-in game, especially with the Georgia Tech win, and a Cal win we'll talk about here in a minute. But at the end of the day, then you got Louisville on a Friday night after another bye. So you go 3-0 in those football games, you might be undefeated at the end of the season and one of the top, maybe the top seed going into the CFP. This team has everything on the table. They have everything rolling for them right now. I think they are going to be firmly in the mix deep into the season. Then for South Florida, they're going to be fine. Now, you probably need to run the table, but you probably had to do that one way or the other. And then you probably got to beat Tulane in the American title. Plenty of time to be figured out. A lot of good teams in the American. So we'll figure that out as time goes on. But seems like those two are on a little bit of a collision course. We'll talk about that in time. They still have at North Texas, a tough team up there. You also have at Memphis. So plenty of work to be done over at South Florida, but team still looks like the CFP favorite as far as I'm concerned. Vanderbilt gets a big-time win, 31-7 over South Carolina. Lenore Sellers left this game. Now, that should always be said to start this game. Now, Vanderbilt was rolling pretty early in this game, so I'm not necessarily saying that it would have been a totally different result if Lenore Sellers was in. I can promise it would have been a little bit different. Now, will South Carolina win? We'll figure that we'll see what happens with South Carolina moving forward, but Diego Pavia continues to make big-time plays. He continues to be the absolute heartbeat of this football team. Cedric Alexander is special, and he's a guy that should be talked about much, much more. He's a guy that's probably one of the more underrated running backs and skill players in the entire country. He deserves all the respect in the world, and the Vandy defense really looks special right now. Now, there will be tougher challenges than Luke Doty throughout the football season, but really good football team. They move forward, and they should be good the next 2 weeks, I believe, against relative layups. And then they got at Bama, LSU, Missouri, Texas, Auburn, Kentucky, Tennessee. It is not going to be easy. They got a lot of games in there that they could absolutely lose. They have a number of games that it probably won't go all that pretty for them. The reality is a very tough football team that can beat Alabama. As we showed last year, they can beat LSU. They can beat a team like Texas. And then we'll see what happens at the end of the season. Obviously, plenty of work to be done. If I was to make a bet, I'd probably not pick them in the CFP, but you never know what can happen with Diego Pavia under center. For South Carolina, if Lenore Sellers isn't healthy, this season's a wash, if I'm being totally honest. I haven't gotten any update there. We'll see how that develops throughout the next couple of weeks. The reality is they go to Missouri next week. They need him there. And then they have LSU, Bama, Ole Miss, A&M. I think it's going to be a disappointing season for South Carolina, especially if Lenore Sellers is down, even if he's not. I don't know if this offense has enough firepower consistently to keep up with a lot of the teams in the SEC. Ole Miss gets a 41-35 win over Arkansas. They escaped just a little bit in this football game, and it was a very weird football game, really from prior to the football game started. Trinidad Chambliss started this game. The quarterback that came over from Ferris State, the D2 school, was an elite player there, and he looks the part early. There's no doubt about that. Austin Simmons was quietly injured all week, was not on any of the injured reports. I made a pick, assuming that Austin Simmons was going to play this football game. Probably would have made the same pick if I knew, but at the end of the day, Chambliss goes for 3 scores, 2 on the ground, over 400 yards. Special player. I think we have a quarterback controversy in Oxford. We'll see how that develops. I think they wanted to lean to Austin Simmons because he is the future. He is the guy that's going to be on your team in 2026 and maybe 2027, so plenty of things to happen. We'll see how that kind of develops, but Austin Simmons didn't look healthy when he came into this game for the one play I believe he did. And then Trinidad Chambliss, he brings your offense just that little bit different of a look, especially with that run game that Jackson Dart gave you just a little bit as well. So we'll see how that develops. It's a very interesting thing to watch. I assume that Trinidad Chambliss will play this upcoming weekend against Tulane. Tough Tulane team. We'll talk about here in a second as well. But then you got LSU right after that. If they go 2-0 there, they're probably on their way to the CFP. Now, they still got some tough games after that, but they're in pretty good shape if they find a way to win these next 2 games against Tulane and LSU. Then you have Arkansas at Memphis next week. Not an easy game by any means. Notre Dame at Tennessee, A&M. It's not going to get pretty. LSU, Texas, Missouri later. It's going to be rough. I can just be totally honest here. I think Taylor Green is going to be able to win you a couple of games just off pure athleticism, pure ability. But I don't think it's going to be a whole lot of them. I think it's going to be a tough season, and I hate to say it, I don't think we're going to have Sam Pittman around there in 2026. I'd love to have him around there. He's one of my favorite coaches in the country, but I just don't see it happening. Alabama gets a 38-14 win over Wisconsin. They did what they needed to do. There's no doubt about that. They executed at a very high level. They're fighting for every snap. Ryan Williams is back to playing elite football the way that he should be. Jeremy Bernard continues to be maybe the best player on that football team. And Ty Simpson had 5 incompletions, 4 touchdowns. The run game is a problem, and that's something that you're going to have to figure out before you get to UGA, because you don't have a run game against UGA, you're not going to score points, plain and simple. So you got to figure out a way to get that going. Maybe it's Jam Miller just coming back is enough. We'll figure that out. Huge shout out to Bray Hubbard in this football game, and really the last 2 football games. He got ripped apart after the FSU loss, rightfully so in some respects, and I think he would tell you that in a lot of ways. But he came back so strong. He is playing elite football right now. He is flying around the football field, had 2 INTs in this game, laid out a number of people the way he does. That's a special football player, and that's a guy that really works his butt off to be as good as he possibly can for Alabama every Saturday. He wasn't very good against Florida State. I think he understands that. I think he took it as fuel, and he's done an incredible job. Huge shout out to him. Huge shout out to the Alabama defense overall. LT Overton's making big time plays. That team is finally looking like the Alabama we expected coming into the season. They get Georgia after the bye. They win that one, everything is back on the table for a team that we thought might have been dead after week one. They have Vandy, Missouri, Tennessee, South Carolina, LSU, Oklahoma. It is not going to be easy. They have a number of games that they absolutely could lose. I'm still teetering on whether or not they're a CFP team right now. They have a number of things to figure out. They still look like the football team that I think a lot of us expected them to be. For Wisconsin, you do get Maryland next week, so you have the ability to maybe win a Big Ten game. But then it's Michigan, it's Ohio State, it's Oregon throughout the rest of the year. Again, I think you could have a different coach up there in Madison by the end of the year, and that really stinks because I think Luke Fickell's a great coach that might have just played this thing a little bit wrong from the get-go. So very, very interesting situation up there for Alabama. You're starting to look like Alabama again. You got to put on a statement performance in 2 weeks, but as of right now, Bama looks like Bama. West Virginia wins the backyard brawl in overtime over Pitt 31-24. Nico Miracle wins a very weird quarterback situation up there in West Virginia and is able to win this one. Ty Edwards was the show, though. He had 25 carries, 141 yards, 3 touchdowns. Special player in the right offense for his abilities. There's no doubt about that. For Pitt, you needed this one, if I'm being totally honest. You still have Louisville, Florida State, Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, and Miami. You didn't have the ability to lose this one and find your way into the CFP. I think you're in a relatively bad spot. Now, if you run the table in the ACC and win the conference, very different conversation, but I can't imagine that being the case, especially after this performance. That offense just looks a little bit out of sync as of right now. You got to beat Louisville in 2 weeks. If you don't find a way to do that, you're in really bad shape. Moving forward, West Virginia is a really weird team. There's no doubt about that. They lose to Ohio last week. They find a way to beat Pitt this week. They go to Kansas this weekend. If they start 1-0 in conference play, who knows? Then you got Utah coming to Morgantown, and they're coming off a game against Texas Tech that is going to be very, very intense. Who knows what happens for Rich Rod in year one? It was a very, very poor start. Maybe it's a strong finish. I wouldn't necessarily bet on it, but you never know with Rich Rod in West Virginia. Tulane gets a big-time win, 34-27 over Duke, their second Power 4 win of the year. They absolutely rolled Northwestern in week one, but they got Ole Miss next week. They have the ability to find a way to win that game. Then you're above South Florida when you talk about the group of 6 CFP race. Now, going to be really, really tough. And we'll talk about that game later in the week. But Jake Retzlaff's legs continue to be the difference maker for this football team. It continues to be the thing that is making this team really special. Had 111 yards, 4 rushing touchdowns. This kid's different in a lot of different ways, and he brings something to this football team that they didn't have last year, and I don't think they were going to have this year before he came in, at least not to this level. They're in really, really great shape. If you find a way to compete with Ole Miss, which I think is on the table, I think they have a number of different things that are a little bit sketchy up there. You know, Trinidad Chambliss came into that football game. I don't think Arkansas knew he was going to play in that football game. Tulane will know one way or the other. So we'll have to figure out what that looks like, and maybe they can slow down the Ole Miss offense just a little bit more. But point being, I think we're setting up for the group of 6 kind of showdown at the end of the season. Obviously, Tulane and South Florida have a lot of work to do before we get there. North Texas has plenty to say about the American coming forward. But at the end of the day, if we get those 2 teams playing for a spot in the CFP and the American Championship, that'd be pretty darn special. These are 2 very, very good football teams, and I think they're in really good shape. For Duke, you have an advantageous ACC schedule, so you're not necessarily out of it. If you're getting ripped by Jake Retzlaff, I can't imagine what Haynes King is going to do to you. So I wouldn't feel all that confident about Duke as of right now. I think they have the quarterback to do some really fun things. I don't think they have the quarterback to go win the ACC and find a way to get a win. So I think they can get to 8 wins. I think they have a confident year, but probably not the year you had in mind, bringing in Daria Mensah for the amount you brought him in for. And then finally, let's talk about Arch Manning here for a second. He's playing really bad football. There's no 2 ways about that. He hit his first four of his first 5 passes, and then he misses 10 of his next 11 throws. One of the worst picks you will ever see, and he had a guy open for the first down on a 3rd down. The mechanics are bad. It's not the same player that it was a year ago. I tweeted this out yesterday. The mechanics early on last year were perfect in every sense of the word. The base was absolutely perfect. He was slinging the ball the exact way he wanted. The arm slot was totally different than it is right now. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it's a physical thing. Sarkisian has totally denied that, and I tend to believe him in that respect. I don't know if it's a mental thing. Sarkisian thinks it's that, and I tend to agree with him. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the hype and all of the energy and all the stuff that's been put on this kid has gotten to him. I don't know if it's I don't want to say the word, but there's a reality here that something is wrong. I don't know what it is, but that is not the football player we saw last year. And it's not even from a, maybe we overrated him perspective. Maybe we put too much on him. Maybe he's not the football player that we all thought. That could all be the case. There's no doubt about that. He's a different player mechanically. He's a different player in the way that he goes about business, and it's just not remotely the same. And I don't think that's something that totally breaks down in one offseason. Now, it is something that can come and go, so that's something he's got to figure out. The way that Texas is playing right now, they're going to win 8 or 9 games at most. This offense is not playing good enough football now. The defense is going to keep you in a lot of games, which gives them time to kind of figure things out. Maybe you can go down to Florida in 2 or 3 weeks and find a way to win that football game just based off defense. It can't be the entire season. You're going to lose Red River if you play this level of football. You're going to lose to A&M. You're going to lose to Georgia, and you're staring down an 8-4 season when you came in thinking national title. So a lot of things to figure out for Texas. The good football is in there. That's the one thing I do want to say here. He played way too good of football through 2.5 games last year for that not to be at least part of his game. Now, it absolutely cannot be as big of a part as it was made out to be last year, but he was playing free last year. He was playing confident, knowing that Quinn was going to come back in, knowing that Quinn was going to be the quarterback. He's got to get over whatever the mental block is. He's got to get over whatever is happening to him, because that's not the football player we saw last year. And frankly, I think that football player is still firmly in there. I just think he has to, in some ways, get out of his own way. So we'll see what happens there. Obviously going to be a talking point. Obviously he's going to get buried in praise way more than most other players get buried in praise, but he's a very good football player. He's not playing very good football right now. So he's got a lot of things to figure out. If he doesn't, Texas is going to have a disappointing season, and some weird conversations in the offseason could happen. So a lot of stuff that happened this weekend. A lot of quarterbacks that did not play their best football, namely DJ Lagway and Arch Manning, but we'll talk about it all at the very end of the show with winners and losers. We got a couple other things to talk about. We will get into our final word right after this. We'll talk about Ohio State struggling just a little bit. Iowa State maybe sneaking out with a not deserving win over Arkansas State, and 2 coaches that got fired yesterday that we'll talk about right after this, so stick with us.